welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Media. Today on the show, I had a little bit of news come out on Friday last week. I was out in Vegas, didn't get a chance to record a podcast, so I figured that I would bring on the reason that I had some news to break last week with me joining The Athletic full-time as a guy that's going to be covering college basketball, the NBA draft, and a little bit of NBA stuff for all of the cities out in their local markets. It's Seth Davis, the leader, our fearless dear leader over at the Fieldhouse now. How's it going, man?
It's going well. I appreciate you joining the team, and we got quite a squad at the Fieldhouse, and you're the reason that you're at the Fieldhouse, not me. I'm just the conduit. So I'm psyched to be working. I just wish you had a little bit more energy and enthusiasm and knowledge about the sport of basketball. But we'll work on you for that. We'll work on you.
Yeah, clearly that's what I need to make sure I'm successful at this. We were out in Vegas last week. We had a great time covering all of the AAU events that kind of go on out there. But before we get into all of that and get into college basketball, I kind of wanted to just let the people hear from you kind of what your deal is here with The Athletic. So can you kind of give the people a roadmap in terms of where you started with The Athletic, when this came about, and then we'll talk about like why after, but just kind of give them an idea of how this entire thing came about.
Well, it started with a piece of unfortunate news for me, which was after 22 years, I was being laid off at Sports Illustrated, which has had numerous layoffs over the years and is having its own challenges, like a lot of media organizations are having challenges. But I had actually, Sam, been exploring the possibility of launching my own college basketball platform really over the last year and talking to different organizations and entities and people in venture capital and people in Silicon Valley and just kind of getting the lay of the land, and had actually gone down a path with a couple of different places which I thought could lead to something, and reached a couple of dead ends, but met a lot of people and a lot of contacts and certainly learned a lot. And so when I did get that call and I was doing it partly in anticipation of someday getting that call. So when I did get a call, I reached out to some folks at the Turner Group, which is an investment fund based in California. They invest in a lot of digital areas. Barstool Sports is one of their main properties, and Full Screen as well. And they connected me with Alex Mather, who's the CEO of The Athletic. And Alex, as having dealt with him, is just a very impressive individual, a lot of energy. These Silicon Valley startup guys are just a different breed of cat now, and really smart. And, it was really within a couple of weeks, Sam had formulated what we were going to do and what I wanted to do with the Fieldhouse, and he loved the idea and has empowered me to hire people and build out a platform. And he knows what he knows, and he knows what he doesn't know, and I certainly know what I don't know, which is a lot. And between the two of us, I think it's a great. I think we know a lot between the two of us, and we're ready to get going. So we're going to launch on October 1st, and we're going to put you and Dana and Brian and some other folks to work, and really give college basketball fans, I think, the coverage they deserve, which they don't get. They get it for 3.5 weeks in March and early April, but the rest of the year, college basketball is pretty much forgotten. But that certainly will not be the case at the Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Dana O'Neill and Brian Hamilton, obviously, two incredible hires for us, like right off the bat. Like both of those guys, I've gotten a chance to spend some time with Brian before this week. This was my first time spending some time with Dana, like full time, this week while we were in Las Vegas. Both incredibly intelligent people, obviously both really strong writers in terms of features as well. So you can expect a lot of really great stuff from us there. I think that they're going to do a great job, and I'm going to cover basketball the way that I cover basketball, which is just breaking down what's happening on the floor and breaking down news items and stuff. Obviously, the NBA draft's going to be a big portion of this as well. So I kind of wanted to make sure I threw their names in too, because they're very deserving of this opportunity too. I think it's going to be great to get them involved, both on the podcast and everything. Let's kind of pivot though toward why. Why do you think that The Athletic and their model is the way to go moving forward here? Obviously it's going to be a subscription-based website. You have told me and have told the public, obviously, it's going to be somewhere between $4 and $7 a month, depending on, what kind of package you get, if you get like a premium package or if you get just like a package for us or, whatever you end up doing, you can kind of give more detail there, as you know. But why do you think that this model is more important or is an important endeavor to go out and, kind of achieve or go out and even attempt to throw out there?
Well, because every other model has failed. Obviously, the print-only model is, gone the way of the AOL, phone startup login. The free digital advertising model is just crumbling because there's so much content out there that you have to scale it at such a high level to make it worthwhile for these advertisers, and then you have to bombard your readers with banner ads and pop-ups and videos, and you can't even get to the words most of the time if you're a reader. So, I know as a consumer of news and sports and politics and everything else, it's very frustrating to click on a story and not be able to find the story. And as soon as you get that pre-roll, you click out of it. So, really, by charging a very small amount of money, relatively speaking, not only are you delivering good content for a passionate audience, but you're delivering a quality user experience, and that is what a lot of these places unfortunately have a hard time doing. On all these athletic platforms, there are no ads, literally no ads. Now, maybe there's a way down the road, maybe sooner than later, to build that revenue stream. But the most important thing is to serve the audience. And when people say to me, well, people aren't going to pay for content, it just cracks me up. I mean, people pay for content every day. I mean, look at your cable bill. You're paying a lot of money, and you're not watching 90% of those channels. And I know, and that's why people are cutting that cord. People pay for Netflix or Hulu or, what have. There's lots of different ways that people pay for content. You have to give them something worth paying for. And so, what Alex did at The Athletic, I think, is really kind of see where this was happening and say, well, if that model is going down the tubes, what's next? Where are all these really good writers going to go that have proven that they are building big audiences? So he has proven with his previous venture at Strava, which is a platform for exercise enthusiasts. He was, I think, the 8th person hired there. And then and these platforms that he started in Chicago, and then he built it out to Cleveland and Toronto. And the Toronto platform turned profitable inside of a year. That's unheard of in the media industry. So he's already proven that this model works. The only question is, can you find the right talent, the right people to move this forward? And I think it's pretty evident that he's done that, and that we're doing that at the Fieldhouse.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the way that he operates after kind of speaking with him, and this is kind of Alex Mather, our CEO. I mean, he basically just kind of comes at you with, empowering you to do what you have proven successful at, first and foremost. And then he just came correct, he didn't sugarcoat anything. He didn't, promise you the world. He said, this is what we're going to do. This is the contract I'm offering you. Take it, leave it, whatever. We'll work. I think that this is a great model for us to do it. And that's something I really respect. I'm not someone who likes to, fuck around and play games and do that kind of thing whenever it comes to contract negotiations. I've had a history of doing that in the past and don't really want to do it again. I was really appreciative of the.
Well, that's a guy who runs a digital startup as opposed to a big media company. And you and I have dealt with very large media companies, and it just takes forever for decisions to get made. No one ever seems to really know why decisions are being made or who is making them. And then if they don't work out, nobody owns them. He doesn't have time to mess around. He doesn't have time to. When you start your own company and everything is on you, a lot of times in those early days, you're living month to month. And you eat what you kill and you move on, and you just get used to a life of stress and instability, and that comes with a big adrenaline rush. But if you're waiting too long to do things, then you're going to miss out. And again, that's why I'm so optimistic about this venture that we're doing, Sam, because we're going to know everything in the digital world is measurable, to the decimal point. If we do something let's try this series or let's try this, and nobody reads it, we'll know that. We'll say, okay, well, that didn't work. And then we do something that we probably didn't think is going to be big. Oh, my God, this is going gangbusters. Let's do more of that. And we'll have not only the ability to measure it, but then the ability to react and adjust our behavior. And having worked at, a major company like Time Inc., which is a great American institution, it's just when you get so big, you lose that ability to adapt. So, yep. So I think we're really built for success in the age that we're in.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's also something to be said for content providers having a bit more control over the content that is being provided, right? And actually being able to look over the decimal points and look over what is being, what has been successful and what has not been successful, and being able to look at page views. And some places I've worked, I have known what my page views look like. Other places I've worked, I have not. I think it's really important, though, to kind of have that business sense. I mean, I come from like a business background. Like I have an MBA essentially from the entertainment industry from Carnegie Mellon. So like that's the way that my brain works about this stuff. But like, I think that some people, it doesn't work like that. But I think it's really important for content providers to have a feel for what's working and what isn't. And it does seem like with us, we do have a chance at least to, kind of see what's working and what isn't, and then pivot if we need to. And, the word pivot has gotten such a negative connotation due to the way that, the word has been used in reference to video. But I think that, we can pivot within the context of the written word here, and that's a really important aspect of this.
Yeah, and I believe and I know for a fact that if you give people something worth reading, they'll read it. And this idea that people don't want to read, it's just not true. So, it's a good game to talk, but we have to deliver. And starting October 1st, I think another thing we're going to have really going for us, Sam, is, and you mentioned about Dana and Brian. I really feel like we know our audience.
Yeah.
We are our audience. I see this in different veins. There's I'll call him out by name. There's a guy at CBS named Tyler Hale, who's one of the he's one of the real muckety muck executives and produced shows for me when CSTV was starting. And I always said about Tyler, grew up in the Syracuse area, so he's a huge Syracuse fan, and went to Penn, so he's obviously very bright. I said Tyler's so good at what he does, because if he wasn't running this show, if he wasn't producing this show, he would be watching it.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised at how many people who are working in this business you might not quite say that for. So
100%. Yeah.
Clearly, that's why. So we can trust our instincts. Like we can say, I think this is going to be a really interesting. I am interested in this story, and therefore, if I am interested in it, then I think our audience will be interested in it, because I am my audience. I don't have to guess what they're thinking. I am them. So I think that's going to be a great asset, and that's going to be the type of people that I'm always going to be looking to hire as we move forward.
Well, I think too, we have direct, interaction with our audience as well. Whereas sometimes, editors are kind of behind the veil. They're behind the veil of what is going on, like what we're hearing from our readers. We're at least going to know if something hits or if something just totally falls flat from our readers, because they're going to tell us.
Right.
And I think that being more connected and being able to kind of pivot in that way also really helps, being able to get that direct feedback. And I think that, both you and I particularly, we both have those like really strong social presences where we interact with people all the time and talk to people all the time. And, I think we're going to get a really good feel pretty quickly for if what we're doing is working.
Yeah, and I want to, as I think I wrote this on Twitter again this morning about, I'm very passionate about the notion of finding, young, whether they're college students or maybe just out of college, people who are trying to break in, and they just want an audience. They want a platform. They want to be able to show what they can do, and they need, frankly, mentoring. I know personally, I've had experience. There's a guy we're going to be working with, Matt Craig, over at Ball State, who's just a brilliant. He's 22 going on 42, as opposed to me, 47. I never grew up.
and people like him who I know are so talented. And on the other end, I know a lot of, for lack of a better word, older people who have been phased out, who are looking for a place to write. And connecting those two pools of writers, I think those folks can do some mentoring as well. I'll tell you what's also been interesting, Sam, is how many people have reached out to me in hopes of editing.
Yeah.
Some of them are writers who are doing other things. Or, hey, I'd love to just edit, and to marry, young up-and-comers with the old grizzled vets and have them edit and mentor and teach that next generation. It's very, very important to me that the next generation of writers understand the importance of journalism, the importance of reporting, and the importance of storytelling. And I actually think, and this is honestly not to denigrate the folks who do this, they do it very well and they get paid handsomely, and I'm all for it. I have nothing against the whole hot take phenomenon. But I think what happens inevitably is, you have a couple of people who do something really, really well, and then everybody wants to do that thing.
Yeah.
And what you find out is, first of all, there aren't that many who do it very well, and now it becomes so commonplace that it's not as special anymore. So I think that the whole hot take thing has kind of jumped the shark, and people are back looking for good reporting, good journalism, good storytelling, and I want the Fieldhouse to be in great position to deliver that.
Well, I think that, having a point of view is really important. There's a difference between having a point of view
that
is well-reasoned and, well-analyzed and, well-spoken versus like just kind of having and nuance. Nuance is the best word to possibly say there. And on the internet, I think that it's unlimited bandwidth. There's no reason to not have the nuance unless you're on Twitter, right? So on this website, I think nuance is going to be incredibly important, and I think that's a great reason and kind of a great kind of a great point to make because, a point of view I think is very important in today's society and in today's journalism. Reporting is very important. Everything, comes together, I think, on a website like this. It's not just going to be one thing that we're trying to do. And I'm sure that occasionally we will be accused of giving a hot take because we give some sort of opinion. But, that's just what's going to happen. It just is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I say, we'll figure it out, but we'll do it in I think that's a responsible. I think you hit on the head. I think you can be. Listen, no one who knows me or reads me or follows me on Twitter would ever accuse me of being unopinionated. I definitely have opinions, but I would like to think that I'm ready to A, back it up with actual information, and B, keeping an open mind and presenting all sides of an argument, saying this is how I feel. These are what the people who disagree with me, here's what they say.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be our model moving forward.
Speaking of being a bit more outspoken on Twitter, let's kind of shift there with you because, man, your Twitter feed sometimes, it's, as me, as someone who is very staunchly...
I'm my own worst enemy, yeah.
As someone who very staunchly agrees with basically all of your views, oh man, you know how to get people reacting to what you have to say.
Well, it's been a kind of organic progression for me, Sam. It obviously happened in the cycle of the last election. And, one of the things that happened was I was just noticing that more and more people were doing that. And so I kind of started to do it, and not that anybody noticed or really cared, but it didn't feel like the great leap that maybe it would have felt like, a couple of years ago.
Have you noticed that though? Like, have you noticed that shift in terms of, people that are, like you always hear on Twitter, like stick to sports or whatever, or like your readers want you to stick to a certain beat, right? Have you noticed that like more and more people are more willing to listen to, talk other than your beat?
I don't know about listening. I don't know about the willingness to listen, but I'm just talking about other people, in the business or sports writers, other people on Twitter giving their own political opinions. So it just felt like it wasn't that much of a leap. And then I was really thinking about it the more and more I did it to say, hey, do I really want to do this? what are the pros? What are the cons? Why do I want to do this? What am I trying to say? What am I trying to accomplish? What's the point of any of this? What do I owe my current employers? I mean, they certainly have every right to be concerned with what I'm putting on Twitter, because the reason why I have such a big following is that I'm on CBS. So it's not like CBS is going to censor my Twitter feed or anything like that, but they certainly have every right to. I know they're reading it, right? And so I don't want to cause problems for them, which would only cause problems for myself and my ability to make a living. So it was a lot to consider, and I said, I'd like to explain this. So I wrote a Facebook post, which I thought would just kind of go out to my little following, and then, it got picked up by Sports Business Journal, and so that prompted a couple of phone calls. And, I think, first of all, the people that I work for trust me on this. And, I don't know how many people know this about me, Sam, or maybe even if you know this about me, but, my father is
I was going to bring this up.
My father's name is Lanny Davis. He grew up very, very, like a lot of, Jewish kids in the tri-state area in the 50s and 60s, very politically aware. His dad, my grandfather, was, a great old-time liberal. And, my dad grew up idolizing JFK and, going on marches, and he went to Yale and Yale Law School and was in the same fraternity as George W. and became best friends with Joe Lieberman, who's my godfather, and graduated Yale Law School, was in the same law school class as Hillary Clinton, met Bill Clinton in law school. They were all good friends. John Kerry, George Pataki, it goes on and on. Not to mention Calvin Hill, who's Grant Hill's dad, but that's another part of the story. So basically, he went to Maryland, he ran for Congress, lost twice, became a lawyer, but was very involved in Democratic Party politics. And then when Bill Clinton was elected president, he worked in the Clinton White House, and he's very good on television. And so I grew up in the world of politics. We had a fundraiser for Ted Kennedy at our house when I was 10 years old. And so I've grown up literally reading. I'm a lifelong political junkie. A lot of times I hate myself for it, but so I felt like I had a knowledge base and an expertise base that I actually kind of know what I'm talking about when I talk about this stuff. Like, I don't know if you'd consider me an expert, but I think I'm more expert, quite frankly, than a lot of people that I see on TV when they say something that I know is either a stupid point or flatly untrue. So I felt like I actually was coming at a place of knowledge and understanding. So it's been an interesting thing, and I like doing it. And the last thing I'll say to you, Sam, is to be blunt, and I don't think any of us can stand on the sidelines with what is going on with Donald Trump. And I have a lot of conservative Republican friends. I have no problem with conservatives. I don't think I know everything. I consider myself a pretty moderate liberal, but what I am trying to get at with Donald Trump, I don't believe this is politics. I think it's about values. I think it's about decency, and I think it's about some things that frankly I thought we were past, like institutionalized bigotry, and so and so that, to me, I don't think being opposed to bigotry is political. I think that's human. So that's what I'm trying to go for. I'm sure I fail most of the time, but that's at least what I'm trying to go for.
Yeah, look, ultimately, like I said at the top here, I agree with everything that you just stated. Like with Donald Trump, the key here is that, this guy is very clearly a misogynist. He is he is espousing bigoted policies such as this transgender ban in the military. And to me, that's more of a human thing than a Democrat or a Republican thing, right? Like, I also fall on the left side of the spectrum, but also find myself somewhat agreeing with some conservative policies, right? I just find a lot of this repulsive, and I'm very glad to have found an outlet that allows me to make jokes about it, like in the way that I do, or, just kind of talk about it realistically and say, like, this is kind of bullshit, and call out bullshit as necessary. So, I'm glad that I can at least like look up at my boss and be like, well, if he's doing it, I can do it too. And, I will say, like, in my history at CBS, I was told not to do that. Like, there was a flat out thing on the online side that was, please do not get involved in this. you know, and I totally understand that from their perspective. Like,
yeah, I did too.
I think that, you know, if they're going to give you the platform, they do, in a way, have a right to tell you the way that they want you to comport yourselves personally. Like, it's, you know, I think you get into a messy spot, but at the same time, it's understandable. All right, guys, Seth ended up having to dip out a little bit early. He's working on a big project before, you know, we start working together at the Fieldhouse. So he needed to go. So I brought on for a second half of this podcast, good friend of the program, Reid Forgrave, now a writer over at CBS Sports, my old stomping grounds. Reid, how's it going, man?
Man, if there's anybody on earth I want to play second fiddle to, Seth Davis is that man. It's going well, brother. It's going well. We just bought a house, which is we literally moved 2 blocks, but unfortunately you still have to pack boxes, and we are still like living in just a total shit show. But other than that, life's good, dude.
Well, like, did you get a moving truck? Like, how does moving 2 blocks work? Because, like, I feel like part of you probably feels like you can do this on your own and, like, you don't need to hire, you know, X, Y, and Z people. But then another part of you is like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, why wouldn't I just hire people?
All of me felt like I could do it on my own. It was like the manly side of me. I'm like, pizza and beer, baby. And my wife's like, you have 2 kids. You're a grown-ass man. Get a moving truck, which we did. I tried to take over as much as I could to keep the costs down, you know, like in the weeks heading up to it. But, yeah, it was awful. I hate moving. Even when someone else does it for you, it's like the worst thing in the world. So I'm now going to live in this house for the next 50 years.
Yeah, like, Laura and I live in this, like, 5th floor apartment in Hollywood, and, like, even if we have kids, like, I'm just like, no, we're going to stay here. It's a 1-bedroom. The kid can sleep out in the living room. I don't really care. I just don't want to move again.
You're gonna end up, like, having, like, triplets in that place. It's going to be, like a TV show about the Duggars or whatever. Yeah, I love it, dude. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, there's no chance that happens. All right, man. We were out in Vegas last time I saw you. We were out top golfing and gambling. Have you recovered from Vegas? How long did it take you to recover from Las Vegas?
Look, I know this makes me like un-American and un-male. I hate Las Vegas.
Oh no, I hate it too. I'm right there with you.
And I know we were talking about that a little bit at Top Golf, but it's just like like Vegas in July. It's the hottest place, you know, on the planet. If you step outside, you know, it's either like 65 inside the casino, or it's, you know, filled with cigarette smoke, or it's like 115, and your eyeballs are like bugging out of your eyes. I'm not a good gambler. Like later that night after Top Golf, I went to play blackjack with Gary Parrish, and you know, I don't think I was down there for more than a half hour, but I dropped $200, which was terrible.
Yeah, we were down there for a good while, and like it was bad. You
were a better blackjack player. You were a much better blackjack player than I was. I get impatient, you know. I'm like up 100. I'm like, sweet, let's put $100 down on one hand. It's so dumb.
It's just like I hate playing blackjack. Like I was asking Parrish, like, do we want to like go play poker? Like I would rather do that. Like I at least feel like I have some control over it then. But he's like, yeah, I don't know. We're leaving Top Golf at like 12:45, and I don't know that I really, you know, want to try and find a table at 12:45. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. We should probably just go play blackjack. We probably should have just gone to bed.
Yes, I mean, that is...
Let's be
like,
honest.
Isn't that like what you're supposed to say in Vegas? Like the next day, like, oh, we should have gone to bed, but I wanted to lose more money. So, yeah, it's ridiculous. What was the name of the hotel you guys were at? That part of the night got a little bit fuzzy. The SLS or something like that?
We were at SLS. Yeah, that
SLS.
was
I never even heard of that place before.
Yeah, neither had I.
It was nice. I liked it.
Yeah, it was good. It was a fine hotel. The only problem was that the restaurants closed super early. And, like, you guys ate at Top Golf, and I was grinding at the arena until, like, 9:15, 9:30. So, like, I didn't eat before we started drinking at Top Golf, and then I didn't eat, like, after we gambled and everything like that. So my entire body was, like, ready to shut down, like, on Friday. Like, it took me, like, 2.5 days to totally recover from like going out, because the heat kills you.
This is probably going to end up leading us into our main topic here, but the next morning was a LaVar Ball game, and I think, was that the game where he got teed up? Yeah, and I completely slept through it. Like, I frankly had seen enough of LaMelo and seen enough of that team and the spectacle at that point where I was like, I don't even want to see him. But, I ended up completely missing, a fairly big news event because I was hungover. Not that I needed to be there because I really didn't want to be there. Did you end up making it the next morning?
So I was not there that day. I have since seen all of the video and since seen the interview with Jeff Borzello afterward, and kind of seen everything that went down with that. Probably should have been there. Was planning on going there, but
Me too.
Ultimately, I'm kind of happy I didn't, given the fact that the game got canceled, and really I was there just to see Emmanuel quickly. I wasn't there to see LaMelo and LaVar at that stage anymore, because, like you said, I'd seen enough. I was there for the crazy Zion LaMelo Ball show. I'd seen all of that. I didn't need to see any more of them, and I see them out here generally. I live out here an hour away from them.
This is because you are Sam Vecini, man of substance. That's why you didn't want to go. The rest of us all wanted to just catch the circus act, right?
Yeah, I've seen the circus act enough at this stage. For the last 3 years or 2 years. Now 3, I guess. I'm good without the circus act in my life. But yeah, let's kind of go into this circus act that is LaVar Ball. You wrote a column on LaVar and Adidas and everything that kind of went on. So let's kind of set the stage here for those who don't know if they've been living under a rock or whatever in the basketball world. So what ends up happening is at the 8 a.m. game on Friday, what is it? It's Court Club Elite, I think, is the officiating group. They send out officials. They were the officiating group that was working with Adidas at the Adidas Grassroots Championships out in Las Vegas last week. They end up sending out 2 men and a woman to referee this game. And LaVar gets teed up. I don't know exactly what he said at the time, but, it was very clear he was being demonstrative. It looked like a fair technical foul from the video.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
He says, I'm going to take my team off the court if this woman refereeing this game is still officiating this game on the next whistle, essentially. And that's very problematic to me in a lot of ways.
I'm gonna take my ball and go home. It's so infantile.
That was the second time in a week where he had either done it, because he had done it the previous Saturday beforehand, or threatened to do it. And that is just crazy to me that this guy is doing this. So kind of give me your take on it. Kind of give me what your opinion is on, this entire LaVar Ball circus.
Well, let me even back up a little bit to kind of set the stage of kind of where my mind is at right now about LaVar Ball. I have been, a somewhat vocal LaVar Ball supporter.
That's where I'm at too. I don't know about vocal supporter, but I have been on team. Okay, this dude is not the worst human being ever. I thought the Christine Leahy thing was bullshit.
I agree with you.
I thought that I don't really love a lot of the stuff that he does, but I understood a lot of the stuff that he does.
Sure. The man is love him or hate him. I think you got to call him a marketing genius.
I don't know that I agree with that, but
look, he may have both created this brand and destroyed this brand within about 4 months. But the fact that we are in July,
he's a notoriety genius. I think isn't
this America in 2017? Every headline is a good headline. It is good to constantly be in the news. It's sort of like the Donald Trump way of being a basketball dad. He reminds me, and there were plenty of coaches that I talked to about this last week in Vegas. He's a lot like a Trump-like character. He's
for sure.
Kind of all sizzle, no substance. Says the most bombastic thing. Wants to be the center of attention.
It's going to be the biggest, most beautiful wall in the world.
Exactly. Big. And then you know what? He went and built maybe not the best shoes in the world, but he definitely built the most expensive mainstream basketball shoes out there.
You know what? They aren't bad shoes. Those shoes, I'm not going to spend $500 on those shoes, but they're at least respectable shoes.
I think they look all right.
So many worse shoe releases over the last year than those.
But including the Steph Currys, which were just kind of gross, just kind of pointless. But the one thing about the Big Baller Brand shoes is they do feel like a shoe that LaVar Ball would wear, not Lonzo Ball. They kind of feel like slightly old. But that's really neither here nor there. You and me both, and I think we talked about this at Top Golf. There was like thinking, hey, this guy's good for college basketball. He's good for the sport. He is a circus act. He's a sideshow, but he, first of all, I think is effective. Clearly an effective basketball dad. I think he is, I guess, a fairly effective coach because his teams are pretty good, despite the fact that they just got ball kids and just a bunch of dudes from the neighborhood. It's not like they're recruiting all over the state of California or all over Los Angeles. Like, this is kind of a neighborhood team. Yeah. And just the fact that we have been when's the last time that we've been talking recruiting on a national scale where Colin Cowherd is talking about it and Jay Billis is talking about it and every single radio show in the country is talking about it, and people who, I'm out in Vegas and a friend happened to be out there for a wedding, and he texted me, he's like, oh my God, dude, are you watching LaVar Ball right now? And
my mom asked me about LaVar Ball. Like,
it's amazing.
My mom asked me if LaMelo Ball is for real. Like, this story has transcended recruiting circles in a way that I think. See, I'm so torn on this because, in a lot of ways, it is exactly like the stereotype that people have about recruiting in the AAU circuit, and I hate that that's perpetuated because there's so much good about recruiting and about the AAU circuit and about, what Adidas and Nike do to get kids chances to get scholarships and, all of the things that kind of go into that. And I think there are actually a lot of really good coaches out there that do the right things for their kids. But this story in a lot of ways kind of perpetuates a lot of those problematic stereotypes about what's going on these circuits. And that's a problem for me. From a standpoint of making this an important conversation within the world of sports, is the trade-off worth it? I'm not sure yet. I honestly don't know.
You know what? I got to be honest. Like that whole female rep thing, where he got her booted, and then not just that, but his following up on it. That she should stay in her lane, and repeating the stuff that he said to Christine Leahy, and just kind of being an asshole afterward. That's kind of where I officially turned into, from a LaVar Ball defender into what's this guy's deal? I wish he'd just shut up and go away. But what is when we're looking at this big picture, as a college basketball writer and as a college basketball fan, what's the number one thing that we complain about this sport? It's that it's not relevant enough. It's that it's a niche sport. It's that people care about it during March and people care about it during the NBA draft. And other than that, it kind of flies under the radar. Well, look at LaVar Ball, man. He's kind of like Conor McGregor. Like, for people who didn't pay attention to the UFC, you paid attention to Conor McGregor. One reason was because he was a great fighter. But if he hadn't opened his mouth, he would, people who weren't UFC fans never would have heard of Conor McGregor. He just would have been another one of those, meathead fighters that you don't pay attention to. But because he has a mouth and because he is a marketing genius, people know who Conor McGregor is. People know who LaVar Ball is, not because of his son's talent, which is enormous. I think Lonzo Ball is an absolute stud. I know you do too. But they pay attention to him because of his mouth. And that's just kind of an unfortunate statement about where we stand in 2017 America, like the America of Donald Trump and Kim Kardashian.
Well, yeah, that's kind of an interesting point here. So do we think there is, someone to blame for this? Do we think that, as a society, what do we think media's role is in this? Should we stop covering him, or should we, or is what he does newsworthy? I'm really torn on this. I think that if he is doing this shit at Adidas, we have to report on it, right? We kind of do. But at the same time, we're just perpetuating him and giving him bigger and bigger outlets to be ridiculous, and it's a problem. It really is the question of, college basketball sports media right now. How do you cover this Donald Trump-like figure of LaVar Ball?
And let's put that into politics. How should national political reporters be covering Donald Trump when he sends out a tweet at 6:30 in the morning saying, no more transgender people in the military. What is the obviously you have to report. He's the president. There's obviously a difference here. But he is making news via his tweet, much like LaVar Ball is making news via his mouth.
Right, and very clearly, in the Trump case, there wasn't actually any policy enacted there.
And
that was just
the military had to come out a day or two later and be like, there's a process, and the process is not the president sending out a tweet.
Right.
We will be going forward as we have been going forward until there's actually a policy change. But I mean, I think that is something that that political media have really wrestled with over the past year to varied levels of successes. Like, do we put every single Trump campaign rally live on CNN just because he's a, quote, newsworthy character? I think if CNN could turn back the clock 2 years, I think they would change that. Not because Trump won, but just because they were treating the sideshow as if it were the main event.
Right.
And I think that's the problem right here with LaVar Ball. And yet, I mean, it's kind of an excuse on our part as the media. I remember talking about this with Matt Norlander out there. It's like, you know what, LaVar Ball clicks, and our job is to get clicks, but our job's also to report what's meaningful and what's relevant and what we believe the news is. And do we want to be? Have you ever seen the movie Adaptation?
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies of all time. Do you remember the Charlie Kaufman character is realizing that he is writing a screenplay about himself and talks about it as in Ouroboros, the circular snake that's eating its own tail? That's kind of what it feels like here with us reporting about LaVar Ball. We're all like, man, LaVar Ball sucks. Shut up, LaVar Ball. Ooh, got to file this really quick story about LaVar Ball.
Right,
and yet I'm not sure if I do blame the media for it. I do blame the media, but at the same time, I'm not sure if there's much of a way around it. I think this is a much bigger statement than just LaVar Ball's an idiot and we keep on reporting about him being an idiot. I think it's a statement about what the state of not just media production, what you and me do, but media consumption is in 2017. What people click on ends up determining what we cover. I think that's a huge problem for America, much bigger than LaVar Ball and Adidas Summer Championships. That's a big problem for where we are as a country.
Yeah, the question is, do we owe our employer clicks, or do we owe, society the responsibility to report on newsworthy things that are important to society? And I think that when comparing this to a political conversation, you have to consider the levels of importance, right? We write about fucking sports. You know what I mean?
Right.
Ultimately, what we cover is so much less important than the healthcare debate and this transgender.
Remember, Sam, sports, I believe, is a reflection of our society, and I think that is what we're seeing here with LaVar Ball. There's let's make another really random out there pop culture reference. Have you ever watched the British television show Black Mirror?
I have, yeah.
It's in season 3, the first episode.
I've not watched that.
So there's basically instant feedback devices that everyone has, like a smartphone, and every time you have an interaction with people, you grade that person on their 0 stars to 5 stars. And
so it's Yelp for people.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's Twitter feedback. Oh, someone liked my tweet, and that's going to you have this small amount of 50 people that like your tweet. Oh, I'm going to tweet more about that because it's relevant. And it just completely fucks up society where everyone is basing everything on trying to have that instant gratification, quote-unquote, relationship or interaction with someone to get those 5 stars because it affects everything in your life. I think that is, very, metaphoric of where we are right now as media. Not all media. I always hate saying the media because I don't think there is such thing as the media. We're just a bunch of people and a bunch of companies who write a bunch of different things about a bunch of different things.
And we're all very different.
Yeah, we're all very different. And yet, I know that when I get something that gets great feedback on Twitter, I'm going to write more about that thing. And if I write a story that I feel is a very meaningful story, a story. Do you remember a guy named Fuquan Edwin? Played for Seton Hall.
Seton Hall, yeah. He's
really talented basketball
kind of stuck
player.
around the D League a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I think he might have gone overseas for a while. I wrote a story his senior year where I went back to his neighborhood in Newark. It's just one of the worst neighborhoods I've ever seen. And he went back and visited his elementary school with him. Just me and him just bumming around the old neighborhood for a day. And kind of like the guy who never had a chance. Look, he's about to graduate and he's had this great career at Seton Hall. Nobody clicked on it. It was a great story. I felt like it was very meaningful. I felt that it was meaningful to Fuquan Edwin, and I felt that I wrote something, that was, overall positive impression in the world. But nobody clicked on it. So it's like, did my story just go into the black hole? And go, what is worth more, writing a column on LaVar Ball that tons of people read but perpetuate something that's bad, or writing something really nice about Fuquan Edwin that not many people read, not many people care about, but to the few who do, it's very meaningful. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know that media in general is skewing toward the former, not the latter.
Yeah, I think it's problematic. Like, I think it's important to cover the big stories, but at the same time, like, if the big stories don't matter, what do we do then? Like, because ostensibly, like, this year, LaVar Ball does not matter in college basketball. Like, yeah, LiAngelo is going to be at UCLA, but my guess is LiAngelo plays like 10 minutes a game at UCLA.
Yeah, right, if that.
So, like, what, are we going to write about any other dad at, like, Kentucky whose son plays 10 minutes a game? I don't really think we're going to. So, like, ostensibly, LaVar Ball this year in the ecosystem of college basketball, especially given that LaMelo is a 2019 recruit, not a 2018 recruit, who will be kind of
who's already
college
locked
basketball
up.
next
Who's already
season.
Signed. There's not a discussion of where he's going.
Right. So, like, none of this really, no, he doesn't matter in college basketball this year, but he continues to garner headlines. So I think that ultimately where I kind of fall on this is I wish that people would stop talking about him. Like, I understand that there are clicks to be gained, and their clicks are incredibly important, as we talked about in the first half with this podcast with Seth Davis. Clicks are incredibly important for news groups, and finding a way to make advertisers happy is really, really important, and gaining impressions is really, really important. But it does not meet the criteria of news enough. And I'm someone who I think has a really low criteria of, like, newsworthiness. And, like, I'm not exactly the person that you will come to and say, like, yeah, he is a capital J journalist. Like, I drop F-bombs on this podcast all the time. And, like I write journalistic pieces, but I don't really, I kind of consider myself a journalist, but, like, I more just consider myself someone who talks about and writes about basketball.
But, like, here's the thing. Like, I liked what Jay Billis wrote the other day about this. I kind of summed up his thinking in the story that I wrote, which is basically like, we're the ones providing the oxygen to the LaVar Ball dumpster fire. Yeah. But if we don't provide the oxygen, it'll kind of just go away. By the way, that's what people said about Trump a year ago. If we don't feed into this, then he'll just be kind of talking, he'll just be tweeting into the wilderness. Well, by the way, like, the cat's out of the bag. LaVar Ball's going to talk, and we're going to write on it. And people are probably going to click on it. I know I click on it. As much of a highbrow journalist as I pretend to be and occasionally actually accomplish being, I still click on dumb things. Like, I'll be not able to sleep at 12:30 at night, and there I am on BuzzFeed, like, 23 things about Mad Men that'll make your nuts fall off, and it's just like, I click on it, and I think it's a big, media has not solved how to balance newsworthiness with clickworthiness. When I started in newspapers, even in the early 2000s, internet was still around, but internet was around, but they hadn't figured out the internet at all. And the way newspapers used to work and magazines used to work was, you write a story, you hope that people read it, you get some response, but you don't know. People would say, oh, our newspaper has 500,000 circulation, and it's proven that 2.3 people read every newspaper that's out there, so that means, 1.2 million people read your story. Well, probably not that many read your story that you wrote. Probably most of them, use it in the litter box. Probably most of them didn't read the sports section or didn't read the business section or whatever section you wrote it for. Probably most of them read the headline and said, I got something else to do. So it's both a good thing that we can measure what people want to consume, but there's like a very there's a bad side to like the populism of media as well. Like it can be really dangerous where it's just like we're all ruled by clicks, and I don't know the answer. Like it's once that box is open, like how do you squeeze it back in? I don't know.
Yeah, like I'm someone like you that, I'm on the internet constantly, and I go to websites like Barstool and like read Gronk is sort of cutting way down on the drinking, and I'm not sure I like it. Like that's 100% something I'm gonna click. And
I read something on Jezebel yesterday that was like, would you have sex with Scaramucci? It was like a poll of different writers about whether they'd sleep with him. And I spent 5 minutes of my day yesterday reading that. And I will never get those 5 minutes back, and it was pointless. But a lot of other people clicked on it, too,
Yeah, like 100%. Like, that is... the Scaramucci thing, I think, is 100% newsworthy, though. The problem is like, Gronk is, again, like, Gronk and his off-the-field habits and, like, the fun that he has off the field and how it affects his play on the field, that stuff matters because he's one of the most important players in the NFL. Within the college basketball ecosystem, though, LaVar just doesn't matter. That's, I guess, where I'm at. Like, he is... for this year, he doesn't matter.
I mean, he sort of has some behind-the-scenes power, I would assume, at UCLA, as much as, Steve Alford might not want to admit that. I'm sure there is some influence that he has there, now and in the future, because of what Lonzo did and because of what his other two sons can do. He is an NBA dad for a guy who is, could easily win Rookie of the Year for one of the most prominent franchises in American sports in the same city where he grew up. Like he's probably going to be at every UCLA game. There's going to be a reporter who's going to try to get a quote out of him that's crazy at every UCLA game, and people are probably going to click on that crazy quote. Like you're right. I mean, he's not newsworthy, but he's influential, I guess, and I'm not sure if there's a difference anymore these days.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, is there a difference?
I'd love to hear like the Poynter Institute have like a an hour-long conference on or seminar on this topic. Like, at what point do you ignore someone who's essentially a media creation? Like, when it comes down to it, LaVar Ball is a sports dad. Let's not overstate his position. He's a sports dad of a very talented, at least one very talented young man, and perhaps two. Although, by the way, I found myself being both like not impressed by LaMelo in Vegas, and then also saying to myself, "What am I thinking? This kid's 15 years old. I'm going to be like, oh, he's not as good as I thought he was going to be, even though he's raining down floaters all over the place."
Yeah, let's move on from like the hashtag ethics of LaVar Ball and kind of talk about that. Let's talk about Melo's game, because I think he is a fascinating prospect. I tend to fall on the side of him being 15 years old. Like, he's shooting like 40% from the field. I understand that, but he's also really, really talented if you see him on the basketball floor. Like, his feel for the game is awesome. Really, really good passer. 6'3" now, no longer super short. Like,
yeah.
People kind of need to wrap their head around, like, he might not 100% be like a 5-star, but he is a realistic 5-star prospect.
Well, and let's imagine same kid 3 years from now at UCLA, 3 inches taller. He's 6'6".
Yeah, like if he grows again and is 6'6", like I don't know how anyone's going to deny like him being a really ridiculous prospect.
And his dad and his middle brother, they're built like tight ends. So
yeah.
I know he is super skinny. That was the one thing where I was like, whoa. Then I was like, he's 15. I was that skinny when I was 15.
Right.
Yeah, he was talented. Great feel for the game, great shot. I love watching his floaters. He had clearly not the passer that his oldest brother is, but still pretty darn good. Like, do you see him as sort of a combo guard, a guy who can man the point, but who's more of a two?
Maybe. I kind of think he's more of a two. I mean, again, he's 15. Like, it'll depend on how much he grows. But, like, I don't know, man. Like, it's kind of hard to say right now. I think he has the vision to play some point. Like, I think right now he's a combo. But, if he grows to be 6'6", he might be a little bit more suited to the two. And like, the other thing here is it all depends on like how his body fills out, right? Because like right now he doesn't have the burst to like consistently get into the lane, but he also grew like 7 inches over the course of the last like 8 months, so he's still very clearly adjusting to his body, right? So
no, that's scary. I mean, that's crazy to think that because a lot of guys can take a while to adjust to that. I think my biggest, two concerns with him. One is like, is he just going to be a chucker his whole life, where he's like just a volume scorer? That's a problem. When you're putting up 50 shots a game or whatever, that's not a good thing. And it won't be a good thing in college, and it'll be an even worse thing in the NBA. I mean, the other thing is like, it's a lot of pressure on a kid. Like, 2 years ago, Lonzo was just a dude in the gym who was talented. Now it's like LaMelo's on WWE with his dad being crazy. He's hated by tons of people for no reason other than they hate his father and his father's antics.
But like, he's also beloved too by like a certain segment too. Like, he has
who
he has like
really?
Over 1 million Instagram followers.
I mean,
like, I think like teenagers.
It kind of goes back to our like journalism hashtag ethics. Like, just because you have followers on Instagram doesn't mean people love you.
Like I think teenagers like genuinely like are very into LaMelo Ball.
Okay, fair. You just wonder how that affects someone's psyche. I don't know. I tend to, your former colleague Gary Parrish, what he said, and which I completely agree with, is that he thinks LaVar's probably a great dad. You never really know until you're behind closed doors with someone, but he's raised 3 very talented, very respectful, very smart kids.
I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Like, I think the fact that like Lonzo Ball is maybe the most humble, like top 5 pick I've ever spoken with, A, it's kind of remarkable, like the fact that he is, but B, it's really commendable. Like, I think that he and Tina have like raised 3 excellent kids, and that's another part of this like juxtaposition that is LaVar Ball. And I don't know how to like, value all of these different, aspects of his personality and all of these different aspects of him and come together with a complete picture, I guess.
Yeah, it's so easy to reduce him to like the WWE villain. And I think he embraces that as a marketer. I think he really does. He is a misogynist. He's a jerk. He screams on the sidelines. Well, he's a lot more complicated than that. He's married to his college sweetheart. He's raised 3 kids. He strikes me as incredibly smart. Incredibly, like whip smart. So
he's a sharp guy. Like, people who say that he's dumb, have not met him. He is, having talked to him now a couple times, like, he is smart. And he has a response for everything that you say.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, incredibly loyal to his family, which I don't think we can overstate. Like, the fact that I think you kind of alluded to this earlier, but when he said some, off-color things to Christine Leahy and was very disrespectful to her, you can paint that as misogynistic. You could also look at what Christine Leahy had said about his family, that, it looked like his sons were afraid of him, and be like, man, hell yeah, I'd be awful to that person. Maybe I'd do it in a more tactful way. Maybe I'd go up to her off camera, but that's LA, man. It's show business. He did it in a way that just absolutely cut her down, and to some extent, I think was warranted. She went after his family, so
just at least look her in the eye while she does it.
Yeah, I know. He's not the best at optics, is he?
No. So that makes it all like that throws another like wrench into all of this. I don't know, man. LaVar is a fascinating character.
That's what it comes down to, doesn't it? Like, why we're paying so much attention here isn't just because he says crazy things, but because he is he's a multifaceted, fascinating character and that's the good side of him that I do think we need more of in sports. And clearly, the dude crosses over the line a whole lot. Maybe I kind of doubt it, but maybe he's learned a lesson over the past few months.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to talk about LaVar Ball again on this podcast. I can guarantee you that. Am I going to do it as much as, say ESPN is right now? Am I going to do it as much as, other outlets are going to? No, I'm not going to, just because I don't find him interesting enough to, hold multiple shows a week as a lot of these outlets have. But at the same time, he's still an interesting character. And I don't know how to exactly, these are all things that I wrestle with whenever
You know who he is? He is, as a media archetype, he is Johnny Manziel. He is Tim Tebow.
But he's not, though. Johnny Manziel won the Heisman.
Look, his son, Lonzo Ball.
But it's his son, though. It's not him.
Yeah, but it's almost like he's the... Yeah, no, I get that. But, our fascination with him is similar to... maybe the Tebow comparison. Again, yeah, Tebow won the Heisman, too.
Yeah.
But did nothing in the pros, and here we are following around Tim Tebow as a minor league baseball player.
Right.
Like he's a rock star. So I think it's just media infatuation. We can get obsessed with someone and people can start clicking on it, and it's Ouroboros, man, that just feeds on itself.
Yeah. I don't know exactly how to work it. I don't know how to, make LaVar Ball newsworthy, but also not he's such a dominant presence that it's hard to whenever he says something, it's just going to blow up. And that's really hard to, that's hard to avoid. Cause here we are, we've talked about him now for 35 minutes when I don't know that I wanted to do that, to be honest. Maybe that makes me a shitty podcast host. That's probably true.
We should be a lot more excited about RJ Barrett reclassifying up a class. That's what we should be talking about, right?
How much have you seen RJ?
Not too much. Mostly just watching him at the FIBA championships. I'm hoping to do a story on him at some point this year, but he was a stud. He killed that Calipari Team USA. He was an absolute killer.
Yeah, no, he's a stud. I'm going to have a recruiting podcast later in the week where I'm going to get into the weeds on all this stuff, but he's a stud, full stop. He's a guy that I have it very clearly the number 2 player in that 2018 recruiting class now, currently behind Marvin Bagley, who very well might end up going to Kentucky or Duke or USC for this upcoming college basketball season.
That's the story right there, right? That the reclassification of stud players, and they should be that is kind of the unintended consequences of one and dones. Instead of guys graduating from college or graduating from high school and spending 1 year in college, they're graduating from their junior year of high school and spending their senior year of high school as a freshman in college.
Well, yeah, but the key to all of it is they're all older too, though, sure. Right? All these guys, to be able to do that, you have to be a little bit old for your age group because you have to be eligible for the NBA draft after 1 year of college, right? So, Auburn had a kid this year, Austin Wiley, that ended up doing a similar thing, reclassifying, going for the second semester of his, what would ostensibly be his senior year of high school. But because he wasn't turning 19 within the calendar year, he had to return to Auburn. And, he would have returned anyway because I don't really consider him to be a high-level NBA draft prospect yet. But he, as far as a rule standpoint, he's a good example of you actually have to be old enough.
Yeah, by the way, I saw him out at tryouts for that USA team in Colorado Springs at the Olympic Training Center out there. Mm-hmm. Austin Wiley was a stud out there. He was just an absolute beast. So I think Auburn, by the way, total shift of subject. I think Auburn could actually be a pretty good team this year.
Yeah, I agree. I had before his injury, because he's going to miss a little bit of time here. I think that he might be ready for the first game of the regular season, but bigger guys getting into shape, kind of getting going again. It takes a lot of time. I had him on my top 100 college basketball players list that I sent off to Athlon, and then ended up throwing him off after the injury and everything, just because I think it's going to take him some time. Before his injury, and if his injury does not hold him back in conference play, I think that they're an NCAA tournament team. Mustafa Heron is a guy.
I love this game.
Yeah, I have him in the top 50. I think that he is a top 40 NBA prospect. He's really goddamn good. They have a lot of guys on that team that can actually really, really play.
I remember seeing him when he was committed to Pitt and being I think it might have been a different Team USA tryouts for a U18 team maybe. But I remember thinking he was a grown man at age 17, and I think he's awesome. So yeah, that's Bruce Pearl getting it going in Auburn. Who would have thought that?
Well, they have to prove it that they're getting it going though.
Right.
They were talented last year. So we'll see. Reid, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Anything you've seen on your summer trips to Team USA, recruiting, everything else?
Oh, gosh. You know what? Sleeper dude for this year, I was just thinking about him last night, which is a weird thing to be thinking about at midnight when I can't sleep. Quentin Rose, the Temple kid, I think he's going to be awesome this year. I think he could end up being an NBA player. I don't know if he made your top 100 list, but if he didn't, get him in there, brother. Get him in there. And also, here's something silly. I don't think Zion Williamson is going to be a particularly good NBA player. That make me crazy. But he might win a dunk contest, as Matt Norlander pointed out to me. But I think his game is, I don't know.
He's a 6'7" center right now.
I know. And his shot's kind of funky. You wonder if he's completely in shape. I know he wasn't he coming off some sort of injury? So it's
yeah, I'm not super worried about that. He was coming off of an injury. He's definitely 10 pounds heavy right now. But at the same time, the overall kind of tenor of his game, he doesn't really have a whole lot of it. He doesn't have the ability to handle in a phone booth in the half court and create on drives. He can't shoot outside of 12 feet. Everything is a left-handed layup for him. There's just not enough diversity.
I wonder if he's a more talented version of Cliff Alexander, who dominates the summer circuit, but when you go up against more talented, more experienced players, he's gonna be really exposed. Well, whatever. He's got time to work it out. He's gonna be fine. I'm sure.
And he's actually super young for his age group too. Mm-hmm. He does need a lot of skill development though. Right now he's a 2 or 3 inches shorter Julius Randle.
Yeah, yep, that sounds about right, man.
And that's scary. Quentin Rose is a good one too. I talked to some coaches in the AAC. They were he needs to take a step forward, but he wouldn't be bad to include. I ended up not including him. I kind of think he's a little bit better of an NBA prospect than a college basketball player next year. Mm-hmm. But he can play. He's 6'5", right? Can do some interesting stuff.
He might be 6'7" actually. He was probably, at least the first day that I was out there, he was probably the best player at the Team USA tryouts. He was awesome. I don't think he ended up making the team. I think he was in the final cut, so I had to leave. But maybe I had to leave to close on our house actually. But maybe he didn't play nearly as well at the end. But he was great, man.
Yeah, they so a bunch of places have him listed at 6'7" now. So he's definitely grown. That is clear. At Team USA, he measured 6'7" with a 6'8" wingspan, according to trusted friends over at Draft Express. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and look at him a little bit closer, I think.
Yeah, he's worth it, man. So yeah, I think this will be a pretty exciting college season. Also, my alma mater is relevant again. I was talking to Conso Martin about my Mizzou Tigers, and there's all of a sudden, now that they got the number 1 recruit in the country, we have fans. So, it's kind of exciting to see.
Oh, boy. I am so fascinated by that situation. I am not a huge believer yet. I'm a big believer in Michael Porter. I am not a believer in a lot of the other stuff there.
I really liked Kim Anderson when they brought him on. Just a good guy and a good, like on-court coach, and that didn't turn out so well. So I'll take this is definitely a pendulum swing with Konza. The dude can recruit, that's for sure.
That is true. Reid, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people where they can find you on social media.
Oh, it's at Reid Forgrave on Twitter, where I don't tweet nearly as frequently as one Sam Vecini, and writing for CBSSports.com and occasionally in GQ magazine. I'll have something come out. I'll just tease it with this: a college basketball story in GQ magazine that will be coming out in the November issue.
Ooh, that sounds pretty good. You can follow Seth Davis. He ended up having to dip a little bit early, like I said, over at Seth Davis Hoops. Follow us over at the Fieldhouse, the new college basketball website over at The Athletic. We are not accepting subscriptions for a little while yet, but we're getting our feet under us, and we think it's going to be really great, as we kind of mentioned earlier on. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the Game Theory podcast. We're presented by CLNS Media for now. Please, continue to listen. I know that this one was super in the weeds on sports media, but the next one is going to be very college basketball heavy. It's going to be very recruiting heavy. We're going to get back into the swing of things. We're going to do some, top 100 college basketball player lists, top 100 NBA draft player lists on this podcast in the downtime here. So keep it locked here. We hope you really enjoy it. And until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.